Thank you, Todd.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, I've got 1 o'clock.
You ready?
Yep.
Looks like
Let's do it.
recording is started.
The meeting's being recorded.
Okay, so
And-
let's call this meeting to order of the Nevada Department of Indigent Defense Services. We'll start with a roll call. So Cindy, I'll let you do your thing.
Okay, thank you. Dave Mendiola,
Present.
Laura Fitzsimmons,
Present.
Joni Eastley,
Yep.
Chris June Kiliani,
Here.
Jeff Wells,
Here on the phone.
Susan Bush,
Here.
Angela Cook, Kate Thomas,
I'm here.
Lorena Dellinger,
I'm here.
Joe Krim,
Here.
Allison Jaffe,
Here.
Harriet Cummings. I see you, Harriet. Jared Hickman
Here.
and Justice William Moppin. Oh yeah, we got a quorum.
Cindy,
Angela Cook got on after you called her name.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
Very good. All right, thank you, Cindy. Appreciate that. I want to start off first and let everybody know first of all, there's a link that can be found on the DIDS website. The Zoom meeting ID number for that is 870-9501-7292. Passcode is 603840. Also the telephone number. There's several of them, but again, depending upon where you're coming from, I'll just give the one that's at the top here, which is 1-346-248-7799. And that passcode is 892202 with a pound sign at the end. So I have filled my requirement of open meeting law to let you know that. So then we will move on to public comment. And at this time, is there any public comment? Okay, not hearing any. We will move forward with the introduction of our new board members. And I think we've mentioned Susan Bush in the past, selected by Clark County Board of Commissioners, and Commissioner Joe Krim from Pershing County. Welcome, Commissioner. How you doing?
I'm doing great. As long as we don't get blown away today, it'll be great.
Yeah, we've got that same heat. It's crazy. All right. And then just to announce, I am retiring from Humboldt County on March 22nd. And so I have opted to just not continue my serving on the board here. Again, it was one I put it to Humboldt County and I didn't really get a positive answer. So I just thought I'd step aside. That doesn't mean I might throw my hat back in the ring at some point in time, but for right now, I'm going to move on. But obviously we're going to need to vote on a new chair and or vice chair of the board for Indigent Defense Services. And having said
Mr.
that,
Chair,
yes,
I'm ready to make a motion on this if you're ready to hear one.
I was just going to ask for any motions that might be out there.
Well, thank you. My motion is to select Laura Fitzsimmons as the chair and Kate Thomas as the vice chair with an effective date of close of business March 22nd.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
If those two ladies are willing to accept my nomination.
I would second that. This is Jeff.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor, second from Jeff. Any questions?
Hi, this is.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
go
I was
ahead.
just curious if both of those ladies would accept the nomination.
Hi, this is Laura Fitzsimmons. I thank you also, Joni, for the nomination. I am willing to accept it. It may be for a year while we maybe bring some of our newer members or others and shuffle things. Thrilled to hear that I'm hoping, Kate, that you're willing to accept it. But I was wondering if I could just go on mute and go up to Humboldt County and get a TRO requiring Dave Mendiola to stay put. Because I'm serious, those are just huge shoes to fill. Not just leading
Laura, I've served with you on this commission for 13 years. I know that you are ready to fill those shoes.
well, thank you, Joni. But Dave, I didn't know you before this, and I've come to see, how measured, thoughtful, and effective you are, which is gonna be missed. And I'm really, really grateful because you've taken us through, when we lost our Mayor Kroll, we were gonna be, I thought, be calmed, and you just picked it right back up. So I wish you every happiness in life, and I hope you do come back to us.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I can tell you that it's bittersweet. There's always some great times. I'm going to miss a lot of people. But it was just time to do it, and feel good about that. Going to play a lot of golf, and then we'll see how I feel at the end of the summer, and we'll go from there. But thank you very much. Nice comments. And Kate, did you want to comment on the question as to whether you're interested in that vice chair?
Thank you, Chair Mendiola and Laura. I would be happy to accept the nomination and support Laura and try to fill the shoes that you're leaving behind. I'll do whatever I can. I haven't been on the previous efforts for the last 13 years, but happy to step into the role as vice chair. Thank you.
Dave, we're really going to miss you. And that was well said, Laura.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to miss all you guys. I've learned so much. Anytime you walk into a room with a bunch of attorneys, it's a scary thought. So thank you all.
And Dave, you had a guiding hand, and I think Laura was absolutely correct. You've kind of helped steer us when people were just shocked by the loss of Mr. Kroll, and
That was hard.
It was very hard. But Dave, your personality is definitely not like mine, and nor like Laura's, and it is calming, and you guided us through all this time. So thank you for your service.
Well, again, my pleasure. It was really a tremendous cause, and it's something that I've grown to have a great passion about. And it's gotten me into lots of arguments with my PDs. So I appreciate that. At least I had a little bit of knowledge to understand what they were concerned about. So, all right. So let's go back to the motion is on the floor. And any further questions or any other nominees? I guess I probably should ask that first. Okay, if we've got nothing, motion's on the floor. We've got a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, any in opposition? Sounds like we have a unanimous vote. Congratulations, Laura. Thank you. And Kate, thank you as well. You guys will do a great job. Okay, let's go to item 4, approval of the minutes. That'll be for the November 2, 2023 minutes. And I've gone through those and they look fine to me. Are there any questions or any changes to the minutes from anybody?
This is Chris. Pending none, I would make a motion to accept the minutes of the November 2nd board meeting 2023.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
This is Jared. I'll second.
Thank you, Jared. I did see that you're on here now. Thank you very much. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes of November 2, 2023, please signal by saying aye.
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 Great. Thank you very much. That minutes are approved. Move on to item 5, budget and legislative update. Marcy's going to take that. So let's start with A, which is fiscal year 24 quarter 2 county indigent defense expenditure fiscal reporting update.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am going to be taking this. So if you were able to get your paper packets, what I'm going to be talking about is under item 5. So the first one is the county's requesting reimbursement for fiscal year 24. As you can see, we have updated their quarterly spending for the first 2 quarters, and we've actually had 3 counties that have reached their maximum, and they've already been reimbursed. So those counties are Lyon County, Mineral County, and White Pine County. We've already deposited the money in those accounts, and we're standing by, the state of Nevada's promise that we're going to be reimbursing those amounts instantly or as quickly as possible once we're able to verify. So we just wanted to show you how quickly many of these rural counties are approaching their maximum contribution. Is likely because of the enhancements they've built into their systems. So it's just very exciting to see this funding roll out in that second quarter. I can take any questions if there are any on the quarterly reporting for quarter 1 and quarter 2.
Marcy, is there anybody else who's on the brink?
Yes, so if you look all the way to the right column, the over under, you see that Eureka is very close. They likely will hit this in their next quarter. Lander County also will probably hit this in the next quarter. And Lincoln County could, it depends on how quarter 3 spending comes in. And those are the Davis specific counties. The other counties, the non-Davis counties, aren't quite so close, so we don't expect that they'll be hitting that maximum until likely the 4th quarter.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. And I think what Marcy said, I think, is really important, and that is that, reaching these thresholds early in the year suggests that a lot of changes have been made in these counties. And based on the monitoring that we're doing, again, these are all just things that really are exactly what we're here for, is to make things better. And that's exciting to me. So thanks. Great report on that. Is there anything else on that, Marcy?
Yes, so if I could move into subsection B on an update of work programs for Assembly Bill 518. Again, this is in that same packet under item 5, and what I'm going to be referring to says resolution at the top of it with very small writing. As we can recall, Assembly Bill 518 set aside $13 million for our department to be able to go to interim finance to request funding in order to comply with the Davis stipulated consent judgment. And we actually did have that opportunity to go to interim finance, and we asked for a couple of things to comply. First, we requested for funding to be able to comply with oversight. We requested $626,335. And the purpose was so that the department could hire an administrative assistant to be able to assist with our oversight contract personnel. And then also to have sufficient funding to be able to contract with 2 knowledgeable indigent defense providers that are able to get on the road and give us updates as to what's going on into the rurals. Tom is going to update you more as to what's going on, but we have actually entered into 2 of those contracts, and we're working on entering a 3rd. So I won't go too much into detail because Tom will be touching upon that a little later on the oversight. We also received additional funding to be able to provide indigent defense services training. The benefit of this is for the first time we're able to contract with a conference manager so that our small staff of 3 doesn't have to put together this whole conference. It's a lot easier to be able to do the contract and get everything in place. That contract was signed yesterday. So we're able, once we get a signed copy of that, we're going to be proceeding with getting the space. And again, Peter's going to give you an update as to what's going on with that training. And Peter can touch upon the funding that we received, but we did receive $89,340 to enhance our training program. And Peter's doing a great job on working on that. Finally, we requested $13,000 to, encourage our pipeline system. Historically, we had received funding from the State Bar of Nevada to provide stipends to students to come into our rural counties. And each stipend is $6,500 to be able to go into to a rural county and actually work. We again got $13,000, and with the assistance of Boyd School of Law, we've actually filled those 2 stipend positions. So we have one student that'll be going to Churchill County and working with Jacob Summer for the summer. And we have another that'll be going to Elko County and working with Matt Pennell. So we're very excited that we're able to fill those so quickly in the year, and we'll be able to spend that money. Finally, we requested funding for data collection and reporting. We did have to renew our contract with Legal Server Case Management System. It did cost a little bit more than it had historically, so we did have a little bit of a shortfall in our budget, and we requested coverage of that. And then we also requested funding so that we could contract with Westlaw. And the purpose is so that the department has 150 Westlaw licenses. So as individuals join our Indigent Defense Services group, we provide them Westlaw for free. And again, our prosecutors have access to this. You know, most of our organized public defender's office should have access to this, but many of them have not. So we received $36,908 to improve our data collection and to provide that Westlaw to those individuals. The Westlaw has been provided to everyone that's currently on our list. It is receiving a very good response for people that are very happy to have it. And we're surprised to find out that in some of our rural organized offices, the public defenders did not have Westlaw. So we are excited to be able to pull that out. We have submitted another work program. This is for what's required in Davis, and this is hopefully going to be scheduled for April. The purpose of the work program is to enhance the staff for the Nevada State Public Defender. We know we have to comply with that workload. We need 4 attorneys to be brought into White Pine County because of the increased workload that we believe is going to be there. So we are submitting a work program to be able to add staff to the public defender's office and other funding that is needed. So those work programs have been submitted. We also submitted a work program to continue many of these programs that were approved in fiscal year 24. We have to separately ask for funding in fiscal year 25 to carry them forward. And the one addition to the training that we've requested historically, again, we requested everything moving forward, but we have the idea to do a new attorney training. We foresee that with compliance to the workload standard, we think that we're going to be bringing in a lot of new attorneys to our rural offices. And we want to make sure that we have a training available for those attorneys. So in November, we're asking for, or at the next IFC, we're asking for funding so that we can put together a new lawyer training, have funding to bring all of those attorneys from those rural offices to either Las Vegas or to Reno, so we can all get together and learn the basics of how to be a public defender, how to talk to your client, how to read a police report, how to investigate. And we just really want to set up that basics, because what we're seeing is a lot of our rural counties don't have enough staff to be able to create that training program like we're seeing in Washoe and Clark. So we're trying to replicate something for our rural counties. And that's going to be the additional funding request. So keep your fingers crossed in April that we're going to be getting those funds for IFC moving forward.
Mr. Chair, may I address Marcy?
Yes, ma'am.
Marcy, this is Joni in Tonopah. It never occurred to me that we would have to train an attorney on how to read a police report.
Jody, I think the importance is, what to look for. I think it's always important to be able to look at the crime, realize what are the elements of what the state has to prove, and then you go through the police report and you try to say, well, if I were the district attorney,
That's a great point.
So it's just an important skill that is pretty necessary to have. But we're suspecting that we might be getting a lot of new attorneys in these areas. If we can get these graduates in with a program called Lasso that Peter's going to tell you about a little bit later. But we have real high hopes that we're going to be filling these positions, and we want to make sure that we have that training available for them. And the larger offices already do this training, so we need to do it in our rurals too.
Great, thank you, Marcy. Any other questions about the funding issues that Marcy has just detailed? Okay, yeah, that's great news and a great job by you, Marcy, and your staff. Peter, I know, has been working really hard on this, and we've got some really good things to report here later on in the meeting. So that are related to that funding. So thank you very much. Marcy, do you want to update on regulations?
Yes, so we have a copy of the regulations, LCB file number R033-23. They have been filed with the Secretary of State and they were effective on December 15th upon filing. So with these new regulations, what we've been able to do is this board set the hourly rate for appointed counsel at the similar rate to what the federal CJA panel is receiving. So we did send out a letter informing the attorneys of the new rate that was very, very popular, and had a lot of excitement to actually see this rate be raised. And I think Susan could add some issues of what she's seen in Clark County, but we're actually seeing some Clark County attorneys start to take our rural cases or our post-conviction cases that may not have been interested in them historically because of this rate change. The benefit also of these regulations is it's going to require our rural counties to comply with that workload and set it up in their plans as to how they're complying. So it was so important for us to get these things in place, and they're effective at this point, and we're letting the counties know that they're in place. So we're very excited here.
Very good. Any questions about that? Any comments? Okay, before I go on, earlier I had did not see Susan online there, but now that I see you, I just thought, first of all, welcome and thank you for serving on the board. And was there anything that you'd like to say as far as being a part of this board?
No, I think this is probably my third meeting, so I'm just now officially on the board.
Well, I realize that, but I wanted to be sure I gave you an opportunity to say something. So
Thank you.
all right, Susan, thank you very much. All right, so let's move on to item 6, oversight and the Davis update. And that, of course, is for discussion and possible action. And Tom's going to give us an update on these.
Thanks, Dave. There's a few here. I'm going to try to get through it painlessly. Update on the NSPD. I think, as everyone knows, Chris Arabia resigned effective January 26th, which caused a little disruption in our service, especially in White Pine County. But Patty Cafarata and Jim Hoffman have been filling in and covering admirably. Jim was hired to be an appellate attorney and has stepped into different shoes, taking up some slack there. We were able to bring on Derek Pinney, who's down there full-time now. So we've got 3 people covering. We are informed by the governor's office that a new appointment has been chosen for the head of the NSPD, but they have not named that person yet. As for the other measures that apply not just to White Pine, but largely to White Pine and other far-flung rural counties, there's a number of things that we're doing to address ongoing shortages, including compliance with the workload standards. Marcy has already referenced some of this, and Peter will reference more, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but we've worked with Boyd and then also obtained funding through the general fund for summer interns. Again, we're working to secure some funding for a 3-year, 3-stage LASSO program. We worked to get a rule change to allow student interns to continue to practice in offices between when they graduate from law school and when they pass a bar. They have up to 18 months to work in that limited practice under the supervision of someone else's license. So that's good. And then currently before the court that Marcy and I went down to testify on last week is an additional rule change, which would expand the current limited practice for PDs in rural offices, which right now is limited to 2 years, which isn't all that helpful because by the time you get in and start learning and whatever, then you got to take the bar. And a lot of people who have been practicing for whatever, 5 or 10 years don't really want to take another bar. So right now, the rule change before the court is to just take out that 2-year limitation. And so anyone in good standing with X number of years of experience can come in, fulfill some basic requirements, pay their dues. And as long as they stay working in one of these rural public defender capacities, can continue to do that indefinitely under this special exception. So we hope that that goes through. As Marcy touched on, we're working with the GFO and the governor's office and others to find creative ways to achieve pay parity for the Nevada State Public Defenders, attorneys, and other staff. So those are still in the works, and that will give some relief to White Pine, I'm sure. We've also received permission and authority to create a duty station in Clark County, and we're working on creating an office in Las Vegas that we can kind of, have Vegas or Clark County attorneys staff that office and shuttle back and forth to Ely to cover these White Pine caseloads. We've also, as Marcy talked about, suspended the 2 new work programs, and we're asking for additional training materials. So kind of trying to hit this as many places as possible. I reference this in that detail because it was one of the main concerns that the Davis Monitor points out in her 11th report, which I'll get into in a minute. And so those are all the efforts that we are taking to restaff the NSPD office and to provide full service in White Pine like we're required. I'll take a breath there. Any questions on A?
Tom, I have one question. It's Joni in Tonopah, and I want to go back to the resignation of Chris Arabia. Do we know how many people applied for appointment to his position?
Yes, we do know. We ended up with only 2 candidates at one point, and I think the board will remember that we put out the application. The governor, then Sisolak, wanted 3
more people. Yeah,
3 candidates for them to choose from. We only got 2 applications, so they asked us to re-release it. At some point, we had 5 applications, but then slowly 3 of those applicants withdrew.
Yeah.
So we ended up with only 2 again. So it was Charles Odgers and Chris Arabia. We put both of their names up before the governor, and the governor's office chose. That's how that worked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since we know that the governor has appointed somebody, but we don't know who yet to fill Chris's position. How many people applied to fill Chris's vacant?
I apologize.
That's okay.
That because we didn't release an application. They didn't bring us the process. They just handled that internally.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, this is Laura Fitzsimmons. I just have a question on the Clark County office that you said you're going to staff, and I just need to figure out what that looks like. A Clark County office so people can, do what there and then go up to White Pine or the other rurals that are proximate.
Do you want me to for this, Tom?
Yeah, Marcy probably can answer this more thoroughly than I can. This came out of a recent meeting that we had with GFO staff. So
yeah, so Chris Arabia, when he was in the position, had released a notification that those positions were open in White Pine County. Throughout the entire time that it was posted, he received 0 applicants 0 qualified applicants. And the only way that we've actually been able to fill the White Pine County position is by word of mouth, reaching out to individuals that we know, seeing if they'd be interested. And most of these people are willing to help out, but they're only willing to help out for a short period of time. And none of them are willing to move to White Pine County at this point in time. You know, we have a whole bunch of factors that are against us in White Pine, just like most of our rural communities. Number one, there's limited housing. One of our prior staff members was seeking some rental space in White Pine County and couldn't find anything, so ended up staying in hotels when they would travel to go and cover court. Number two, we lack pay parity for the public defender's office as compared to the district attorneys. There is funding set aside in Assembly Bill 518 for us to be able to request pay parity, but when it comes to a state office, we have our hands tied because the legislature sets what our salaries are as state employees. And we've requested the help of the governor's office to try and figure out how we can prepare a request, whether it's through stipends or if there was an error in the pay bill that sets forth what the salaries are. So we're trying to find out how we can actually get pay parity with the district attorney's office with our NSPD. But that lack of pay parity is really causing an issue. And then finally, we can't have an economic disincentive to go to court. So Derek Penny recently was hired by the state public defender's office, and his duty station at this point is White Pine County or Ely, but he lives in Vegas and he's traveling back and forth. And with the duty station in Ely, we cannot reimburse him for that. Court in White Pine County is Monday through Friday, and they're required to be there all of those days. So he's paying out of pocket for that. In order to fix that, what our solution is using those return to work funds that were set aside for the Department of Administration and getting some office space in White Pine County. And then in turn, we looked at the workload study and we asked NCSC to take into consideration that our White Pine County attorneys would be required to drive to White Pine from Vegas. So that additional information was taken into that workload study, and we've increased the number of attorneys needed in White Pine County, which was initially 3.3. It's actually been increased to 4. So we are seeking to add additional staff. Like I said, we've done a work program to request funding for that. And we are also hoping that once we get that space in Clark County, that we can reimburse for the travel between Ely and Las Vegas, or yes, because we want to ensure that if these attorneys need to be in court, that they're able to be in court. And we don't want these attorneys that are already not in pay parity with their district attorneys to be paying out of pocket such a large amount to be going to court. So we know it's going to be a lot of driving. Again, the reality is we've pulled information from the state bar. There's 12 attorneys in White Pine County listed as having their office there. 2 of them are retired. 1 of them has since moved. 4 of them work for the AG or the district attorney's office. 1 of them is married to a district attorney. 2 of them are private lawyers and they don't want to work for the public defender's office. And 1 works for the AG's office. So those are the attorneys that are in White Pine County. And that has shown us that we're either going to need to bring people in and solve this issue of pay parity and find out how we can do housing, or we need to think creatively and possibly hire more staff out of Clark County and rely on transportation. So we're going with that latter right now and trying to just ensure that we are having attorneys be present. So that's really what our ultimate goal is making sure attorneys are there when needed. And we're just trying to be creative.
This is Chris. Question, if I might, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. Sorry, my dog, Gracie. Remote pay is a way that we used to do it for our rural teachers. And it counted towards PERS. So maybe that's something to discuss with the governor's office for consideration. Or I sent you the one where they earned credit, but it got dropped off in 2017 or 2011 out of statute. So it doesn't even count any longer for teachers, but for each year worked in an underserved area, they got an extra credit towards retirement. Those might be incentives for folks. We actually, as NSCA back in the day, we helped build teacherages, or we bought mobile homes for individuals where they could reside. I still remember I think it's still out in Silver Peak, for heaven's sakes, and Dyer, that we had to put teacherages, so to speak, out there. And it's just sad that in 2024, we're still all dealing with this kind of an issue. But maybe a remote pay stipend that counts towards their PERS might be an incentive as well.
Thanks, Chris. I'm gonna put that down as a possible idea. You know, we are just trying to be creative to make sure that we have sufficient staff out there. At our last meeting where Tom and I went to appear before the interim judiciary committee, and individuals from the Department of Corrections were there. So we were going to take that opportunity to meet with them to see what they're doing to place their staff. So I have that meeting to see what they do at corrections. Maybe it's something we can replicate, but again, we're trying to think creatively of what we can do to bring attorneys in.
Dave, can I make a comment? This is Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, Marcy, I like your idea, and you know I have supported the pay parity because, you know, Clark has that. My concern with this option is you're going to end up with folks that live in Vegas and are doing public defense up in White Pine. Will this not mostly just be a training place, and they'll end up moving over to the county public defender's office because that pay is higher again? I think you're going in the right direction. I just wonder how long anybody will actually stay before they move.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't disagree. But I think we're just trying to make sure that we have coverage until we can get pay parity, and that next legislative session is coming up, you know, pretty quickly. So this is a priority for us.
And
Could
this
I
is
add to that,
yes.
Chairman?
Yeah, and Jeff is right. You don't want to do that. I think we used to do, you had to stay in the position for a certain number of years.
When I was, this is Allison Jaffe, when I first started in the Carson City DA's office, theoretically, you made a 2-year commitment, and none of us knew anything as we were starting. It was totally a training ground. And Carson is a smaller county, and so most of the DDAs when they were you know, trained in that 2 years, went to Reno, to the Washoe County DA's office. So I'm not sure that that's anything that we can stop. There are a few people who remain, you know, in the smaller communities or working through the office, but I think it happens everywhere.
Yeah, and thank you, Allison. That brings up a great point. You know, we again have been trying to think creatively, and we've been reaching out to other states that this is a nationwide problem. We're going through the same thing as everyone else. And what they're doing in other states is they're replicating the student loan forgiveness that they provided to their rural doctors to get physicians into the rural areas. So that is a federal grant where they pay $50,000 towards student loans for a 2-year commitment. And when I reached out to the individual that's in charge of that program from Elko, he said that they're having people actually stay in those rural areas. So internally, we're kicking around ideas to prepare for this board of a student loan forgiveness where, you know, it's large amounts because we need to incentivize them to come into our rural communities, and hopefully we can get them to stay. But what we're learning is the average student loan for a graduate of law school is around $180,000. So we need to do something where we can get, you know, them coming in if it's a $50,000 payment for a 2-year agreement. But this is something that we'll be preparing for you as a possible BDR at one of the next meetings for discussion. But that's what Texas is proposing, and I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Marcy and actually for all the attorneys who are on the line.
Go right ahead.
If I may, thank you. It's Joni in Tonopah. I'm just curious, and somebody please tell me if I'm off base here, but is it possible that a defendant could file a post-conviction complaint of inequity because the more experienced public defenders are in the bigger communities, cities, and counties, And what they are stuck with on the frontier is brand new public defenders who don't have the experience of a more seasoned attorney.
Yes, I can
Laura.
field that first. The first thing is that a defendant or appellant can file whatever they want. And the question is whether the claim would have any merit or not. It sounds like what you're talking about would be an ineffective assistance claim, but
Yes, basically.
but just being inexperienced alone is not an adequate grounds for a finding of ineffective assistance. There's a U.S. Supreme Court case called Strickland v. Maryland, and it sets out a two-pronged test, basically, that you have to fall below the standard of reasonableness in your performance, and then the defendant has to be prejudiced by it. So just the fact that they're young or relatively inexperienced attorneys alone is not enough.
Marcy?
Okay, thank you.
Chair, just real quickly, just to expand on that, Tom, if you look at the Davis litigation, because I think Joni's question was more institutional, like, we're getting the brand new lawyers and the larger counties are getting experienced lawyers. In a way, in a certain way, that's kind of a piece of Davis. And when you see everything that we've undertaken, in light of Davis, in light of the work by our legislature and governors and all of us, it would have to, it just, that kind of a class action or institutional challenge is really one of the things I think that motivated the state and everybody that's helped us come together and do what we're doing to negate that threat. And so in terms of individual post-conviction, I'll tell you, I started out after a year at the Supreme Court at our state public defender's office, and I was never a better lawyer, even though I was inexperienced. So, and I think we all kind of feel that way. So I agree. I don't think we need to worry about it, Joni. I think the things that Marcy and her staff are doing are just really important to meet our mission. But I think if you get new lawyers that want to come in and aren't burned out, White Pine County's hard because in my sense is it's mostly prison cases, which is what Carson City was when I started out.
I think they are.
Those are hard cases, but also, I hate to say it, they're also good to learn on because there's not a huge downside. Sorry. Okay, I'm muting myself.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks.
Welcome, Joni.
Madam Chair, can I speak for a minute? Susan Bush.
Yes, go right ahead, Susan.
And I just wanted to say what we learned this week was that over 50% of the public defenders in Clark County have less than 5 years of experience. So there's new attorneys everywhere. You could get the new one or the old office.
I was not expecting that.
Interesting, yeah.
Well, we had a big majority of our about 16 public defenders become judges, and they were on mid-level attorneys. And then with COVID, there was a huge gap.
Very good. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate that. Any other questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thanks, Joni. Okay, Tom, you want to continue?
Sure, I'll move on just very briefly because again, we're discussing a lot of this in other sections, but to the monitor's 11th report, I believe I saw Professor Hanan on, there she is, earlier, so she's here to answer any questions about that. I wanted to just briefly touch on the areas of concern that she lists. The first one is the understaffing of the Nevada State Public Defender's Office, which I went over in some detail a minute ago. The second one is workloads above the NCSC caseload limits. Of course, this is a relatively new thing because we just got the caseload. We just started doing the case weight analyses, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but Marcy and Peter and I have all divided up the 15 rural counties. We each have 5 of them to cover and to work with the stakeholders there to make sure that they're in compliance as soon as possible, but hopefully by November of this year when the deadline is. And workload reporting gaps. Some attorneys continue to underreport and a few do not report at all. This has been an ongoing issue. It does get, I believe, incrementally better with every quarter. Certainly, I think we're going to start to see even more robust reporting now that we successfully got the funding for Westlaw and are offering that kind of an exchange for reporting. As long as you're in compliance with your reporting, you can have free access to a Westlaw account through our office. So hopefully we start seeing that. And then the other piece of that is tied into the workload increases. I think we've discussed before that Nye County is extremely overworked, especially compared to other counties, even though, you know, there are many jurisdictions in which the public defenders have more cases than they should. The problem in White Pine, I mean, in Nye County has always been that there's really just not enough time for these attorneys to manage their caseloads and do the reporting they're supposed to. The exceptions to that are the attorneys who have assistants. One of them in particular, his wife does all of his reporting and timekeeping for him. So we hope, because Nye has been very receptive to the workload increases, that we'll see an increase in reporting as we see increases in the number of attorneys out there. So that's all I'm going to say about the report. It is quite extensive, and if anyone has any specific questions, I'm sure Professor Hanan can answer those, or I can too. Or Professor, do you have anything to add?
No, thanks, Tom, but I'm available if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
Okay, anybody have a question for Tom or Professor Hanan? Okay, thank you, Tom. Appreciate that update, and thank you, Professor. That was a great report, very detailed. So
And as always, I'd like to just thank the department for being so helpful. I'm not always timely in my requests to them, and they get me the information that I need so that I can write it, often at the last minute or later than the last minute, as this last report was a bit delayed. So many thanks to the department for that.
very good. Thank you. All right. Tom, you want to continue with fiscal year 24 quarterly data report?
Sure, thank you. Quarterly reporting in your packet up on the website. One thing I wanted to note that's a little bit different, because we do have the workload standards. We were able to, Stan in our office, Stan Maurice, has been very instrumental in plugging in the case weights to our existing data. And so now, because we were able to assign those case weights to each type of case, we can then run these specific reports through Legal Server that kind of just better show us how much work this caseload actually represents. You know, it's one thing to show X number of felonies, X number of A felonies, X number of gross misdemeanors, whatever. It's another to kind of put case weights and numbers on those. So we really do get a better sense of how much they're working and how much they're working on certain types of cases, excuse me. So that kind of provides us a different picture than what we've had before. Anybody have any questions about the new charts and new reports?
And just one thing to add, and I don't know if it was touched upon, but that graph that Stan put together, you can see that Nye is kind of extremely out of whack for what the other other counties have in their workloads. It appears that there's a workload of more than 32 attorneys needed. A problem that we're seeing in Nye again is an issue with that data. Stan is working to clean up this data by looking at cases that might be older and reaching out to the attorneys to get them to start closing it. We've seen a lot of switching in attorneys or contract attorneys in Nye County, and they're just generally taking caseload to caseload. And that may take old cases that should have been closed a while ago and move them to the new attorney. So we're hoping by the next quarter that this data will be much more clean. But I think that this gives you a nice visual showing that the workloads being recommended in the study are actually right on for what we're seeing in their snapshot of a workload. And I think Cindy did have a question. We've sent out the paper materials. She included this visual snapshot, but she also included the Excel spreadsheets. We're just wondering if the board could advise whether they'd like to just see this snapshot and refer to the website for the spreadsheets, or if they like to have those tables printed off for review in paper form. So we're just asking for guidance on that.
Thanks, Marcy. I had that noted to ask as well. We're trying to maybe kill less trees. So if you guys could give us a little guidance on that.
Yeah, anybody have any thoughts on that? I like the idea of just being able to refer to the website, but there, you know, sometimes there's folks who do like to see the hard copy, so.
Well, for my part, I think the screenshot's great, you know. I think from just speaking for myself, I don't think we need all of these Excel sheets. I do think if you perceive something, you and your staff perceive something that's concerning, if you brought that to our attention. But I mean, candidly, I didn't look through any of this because it was just too much.
Understood.
Chris, go ahead.
This is Chris. I would echo that. I'd rather look online and save a tree, and then if we have something that's flagged, then we can deal with it.
Anybody else? Looks like I got Kate with her hand up or just giving us the okay. Thank you for that.
That was a thumbs up.
The thumbs-
Sounds good. Thumbs up.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, so I think, Tom, probably way to go is just give us the snapshot and then the rest we can refer to the website if we want to dig down into it.
Perfect. Cindy, I'm sure is very happy to hear that as well. Shall we move to the next letter?
Let's go to D.
Okay. So workload, again, we've touched on this a little bit. We are in the process, the three of us, Peter and Marcy and I, and dividing these counties up. We started in November or December contacting everyone as soon as the board had approved the NCSC study, working with stakeholders to come up with a plan to revise their plans to include all of these new numbers. Overall, and from my perspective, it's going very well. There are a few counties that have more challenges than others. As you could expect, those are the ones that are a little more geographically remote. But overall, as I mentioned, Nye County, we had tremendous positive response to it. And, you know, even to the extent that the board members and the DA were wondering if the increase was even going to be enough. Chairman Diola knows I just went out to present to Humboldt County last week, and overall, though they had a ton of questions to begin with, it was an overwhelmingly positive response, and they the county adopted these standards and are working towards compliance. That's the story, and I would say the majority of the counties. Obviously, the more geographically remote they are, the more challenged they are to bring new attorneys in, but we're working with them and encouraging them to think creatively, you know, adding contracts to the offices and whatever else is possible. Marcy, anything to add on there?
Not on the workload study. I think that the annual reports are due in May, and that's where the counties are going to tell us how they're budgeting. Generally, their budgets are due in May, but it was really important for all of us to reach out to the counties prior to the new year so they knew this was coming and that they could budget. And the biggest thing that we're going out and telling them is that boots and suspenders approach that we brought to this, the maximum contribution formula, is now in statute. It's no longer in regulation. Assembly Bill 518 has $13 million in it. So if those rural counties make those improvements and the 3.5 million we have to reimburse them is insufficient, we can request money from that $13 million. And if that falls short with the passage of Assembly Bill 424, we can do a request to the statutory contingency account to that amount that's over the maximum that we didn't have an appropriation for, and we must receive it from that. It must be provided to us for that account. So we have a clear pathway to be able to get funding, and we're trying to get the rural counties to believe us when we tell us that we're doing everything we can to make sure that any improvement that they make is going to be reimbursed. So that's basically what we've been saying when we've been going out. And I think with having already paid 3 of our rural counties, again, we're standing by that once you hit that maximum, we're reimbursing you. So I think this is all great to be able to share.
Thanks. Yeah, that has been key in every conversation that we've had in every county, is the safety nets there and the reassurance that these increases will be paid for through reimbursements. That kind of puts everybody at ease.
Good job, Marcy.
I could, because they're all on the same letter, I'll go ahead and just touch on, this is a really big deal. We were able to contract with 2 oversight analysts. There's a third in the works, but right now we have David Sheik and John Cadlick out in the field. David's already completed a whole week of travel and is working on reports on that, including White Pine County. He is well known and well respected in those jurisdictions, and so the relationships that he already has there, I think, are going to be really beneficial. This is important for any number of reasons, but it's been a consistent concern of Professor Hanan in her Davis reports and her monitor reports, that we just didn't have the staffing to have boots on the ground in all of the courts and all of the places that we needed to be. And when, you know, we went out on the road, it was a lot of relationship building and not so much, you know, looking at compliance. So we're very excited about this. We have 2 very qualified people in the field right now, and another third, again, very qualified and respected third that's in the works. We're just waiting on the contract to be finalized. Any questions about either aspect of that?
Okay, if no questions, Tom, you want to move on?
Sure. The last thing, and I think I already touched on this, but we've been working on our advocacy and support of 80KT 616 and 617. Those are the things I mentioned earlier in the NSPD report. 616 is the one that allows student interns to continue to do the work they've been doing in these public defender offices for up to 18 months in between graduation and passing the bar. And then 617 is the one that removes the 2-year limit on the limited practice in rural public defenders offices. So we're very excited about both of those things as far as creating additional pipelines to staff these rural offices.
Great, thank you, Tom. Is there anybody have a question about 616 or 617?
And Tom, did you say 617 is the Supreme Court Rule 250?
Oh, sorry. No, you know what? I had those backwards. I jumped ahead. 611 was the student one. So that was the one that allows that gap and work for the student. 616 is the one that's currently before the court that takes away the 2-year limit. And then 617, said that wrong, is that there's a committee being created to revise Supreme Court Rule 250. And I'm on that committee. There's a number of different people on that committee. What we realized recently in working with the counties to include in their county indigent defense plans a plan for what to do if they get a death penalty case. We realized that 250 was pretty out of date, and part of it is not in compliance with Chapter 180. So there's a big overhaul that is going to happen because of that.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Any final questions before I move on to item 7? Okay, we'll move up to a training update for discussion and possible action, and that's Peter's going to handle this section.
Yeah, I'll start with subsection A, that interlocal between Dieter and DIDS. So we received that $50,000 of funding from Dieter. We have authority to spend that over a 2-year period. We anticipate we'll have about 17,000 and some change left over for next year. We're spending that on a variety of things. Some of it's going to pay for DIDS employee training, helping our people get better at legal server, making connections at State Bar Conference. And a lot of it's going to our annual conference training. So that funding has gone a long ways. I really appreciate the folks over at Dieter for helping us out with that. I guess I'll move on. Everything else is sort of under part B, so hopefully it's all right if I move on to sub B. First, I'll start with LASSO. Huge amount of funding that's going to be great for developing a pipeline. It's the acronym, stands for Law Student Supervision Operation. Essentially, this gives stipends to 1L, 2L, and post-grad students of $6,500, $10,500, and $15,500. Respectively, to help them work in a rural county for a public defender. That way they're getting that hands-on training that really you can't replicate anywhere else, and it's exposing them to the counties that are most in need of new attorneys. This helps offset the cost of living out there. It helps offset some of those relocation costs. Maybe it'll offset some of their tuition costs. We should have 10 of those each year, and that also provides some funding for allowing myself, Marcy, Tom, doing some outreach to other law schools instead of just Boyd to bring in students who might not otherwise consider rural Nevada as somewhere to come. Like as a McGeorge grad, I think it's particularly useful to be going back to Northern California, places like Northern Utah, Southern Idaho, and really bring in some other attorneys who would do well here and who historically have done very well in rural Nevada. Moving on to the Mountain Skills Academy, we attained 6 slots for rural attorneys to attend the Mountain Skills Academy. That's going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah. And 6 attorneys have signed up, and that's going to be fully funded. That's actually an NCDC, National Criminal Defense College style training. It's a week long instead of the 2 weeks, but it's a very intense program. It's put on by, it's partially funded by NACDL and a training grant. That's going to be really robust, substantial training, and we're paying for all of the travel expenses for these 6 attorneys to go and make sure they get that training. Speaking of our conference this year is going to be on June 6th and 7th in Las Vegas. We were originally hoping to have it in Elko in a rural county, but it hasn't been working out well due to coordinating with our expert instructors, things like that. We have partnered with the NACDL. They're providing technical assistance through Deja Vishny. She's a nationally recognized expert, a former public defender in Wisconsin, and she's been connecting us with really fantastic speakers and trainers for our conference. I think so far we have 12 different CLE classes kind of covered. We have, I think it's 8 different speakers so far from around the country. And we're flying them into Las Vegas so we can give the highest quality instruction we really can to our public defenders throughout the state. As usual, there's still no fee for public defenders to attend, and we're reimbursing the travel costs by way of the Jack Byrne grant for rural attorneys to attend that training. So we're still trying to up the quality as best we can and really make it so there are no excuses to not go to this. This year we're focusing on DUIs. It's something we think is very portable. It's one of the highest charged cases, more frequently charged cases in the state. And it's one of those things where if you're a private practitioner and you're taking the appointed cases, this is something you can move into your private field and use as a money generator as well as taking those appointed cases. So it's a good balance of bringing people in from private industry that are taking these appointed cases as well as a, bread and butter for any real public defenders. What else do I have going on? Oh, we've also, like Marcy mentioned, contracted with the NPHF, the Nevada Public Health Foundation is going to be doing a lot of the coordinating work. It really does take a lot of work off of my, Marcy, and Tom's shoulders and the rest of the staff shoulders for having to do a lot of that venue coordination and contracting, developing registration pages, doing some marketing. They're going to be working with travel assistance for our speakers. So they're picking up a lot of those labor-intensive portions of hosting a conference. And from my perspective, it's worth every dollar that we're spending. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for my training update, unless there's anything I forgot. I'm trying to rattle it off and there's no court reporter here to yell at me for going too fast.
And Chair, can I just add one thing? The annual conference is going really well forward. We might be reaching out to some of our rural counties to see if they would like to sponsor any of the events. Last year, some of our rural counties sponsored certain things that the department couldn't necessarily buy, but it also gave us that opportunity to let the attendees know that such and such county was sponsoring, the item. And then we also posted or provided copies of every open job posting that we had for our rural counties in the packets that we provided. So a little hint to the rural counties or any county, if you'd like to, have something to donate so we could distribute it to the attorneys and tell them how great your county is so we can try and get them there. We're completely open to that. And then I just wanted to clarify one thing on LASSO. It's been approved at Dieter. We have to go through that process of going through the Board of Examiners and getting that approved there. But our fingers are crossed that it's going to be going forward. And not only do we have those stipends to pay them, but we also have 15 stipends that are $6,500 a piece to pay people to train to take the bar. So we are hoping that we can work with our communities when they're bringing in attorneys, and we're tying this to ADKT 611, where students can immediately start the practice of law, that we can help go around and get those new positions that we're creating for the workload, that we can get that filled with this incentive for our rural counties. It also applies, some of them apply to Washoe, the stipends, if they're underserved, if they're having issues filling their positions. We want to make sure that they're healthy as well. So Washoe could qualify this, or Clark, if they have a significant number of openings. So that was our concern in writing it. It's not fully approved, but we're just so excited we had to share it.
Marcy, during the conference, do you do a drawing? Because if you do, the town of Tonopah would like to donate a big basket for your drawing, if you have one.
So this year we will be doing a drawing.
I think that'd be a great idea, Joni. We would love that. We also got some free t-shirts from, was it NACDL?
NACDL.
That we're gonna give away. So anything we can do to get our public defenders excited and get them to come, we're in.
Okay, terrific. Well, I will make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
this is Chris. Sometimes the local chambers of commerce will donate things, so you might want to check in with them.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Great ideas all. Thanks, Peter. Are there any questions for Peter specific to his report? Yeah, great report, Peter. And, one thing I am looking forward to not having to see every time I get on this call is your beautiful beard, because I'm so jealous. I can't grow hair like that. So
thanks.
Anyway, all right. So next item 8 upcoming meeting, and Peter made reference to the annual meeting. So there is a request to move it from June 6, 2024, or to June 6, 2024. And then some other possible dates, June 13 or 14. So any thoughts on that? And I'll kind of let you all talk that through since I won't be a part of that. So any thoughts on that? Marcy, you want to lead that conversation?
Yes, and just a reminder, we have to set the meeting in June because the board has to approve our annual report, which is due to the governor, the legislature, and the Supreme Court on July 1st. So we need to have a meeting sometime there, and our department will be going to the State Bar Conference because of that DETR grant that we're able to get, and that's that last week of June, which is June 27th and 28th. So we're requesting if we could have it June 13th or 14th. We always like to have one that's in person. We just wanted to highlight that we have been reaching out to try and find space in Lake Tahoe. As you might guess, space in Lake Tahoe in June is either very expensive or not available for a meeting of our size. So we are also asking if we could consider a different location, possibly Carson City or some
Why
other.
don't you meet at the NACO office in Carson City? It won't cost anything, and they have video conference capabilities there if somebody can't make it. And it's a nice big conference room.
Thank you, Joni. We could meet at NACO. I can reach out to Vincent and see if he's willing to give that space. We also have access to the old chambers at the the executive offices. So we have access to that at no charge. And then we can also rent some space if it's available at the legislature, if we'd like to be there as well.
Always go for the free stuff. That's what I say.
Yes. Okay, but are we looking, does anybody object to Carson City?
No, I
Okay.
prefer it.
Okay, great. Anybody else? All right, can we just tie down a date? Because, we're all pretty busy in June and traveling. Are you
What is
looking
staff recommending?
13th or 14th?
Yeah, so the 13th is a Thursday where we generally have our meetings. The 14th is Friday in case people are traveling and they'd like to stay over. So that's our other meeting was set for a Friday so they could make a long weekend of it, I think was I guess it was set.
And that's my motion, Mr. Chair, for Friday. I almost said Madam Chair, but I was premature in that.
This is Laura. I'll second that. Friday, the 14th, which is Flag Day, here in Carson City at a location to be determined, hopefully NACO.
Very good.
This is Chris. I have a question. As I work the polls, what's the last day of voting this in June primary?
Let's see.
I have it on my calendar, but I goofed up when I was doing early votes, and I just don't. The election's the 11th, so the 14th would be over. We're good. Thank you. Never mind.
Okay, so we do have a motion for June 14. Any other questions about that or comments? Put it up. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposition? Very good. That passes. So June 14, that'll be the meeting. And what did you want to say about August 1st meeting on that, Marcy?
We would like to keep the August 1st meeting at this time at 1 p.m. virtually. We may need input from the board. We're going into another legislative session. According to the statute, we need the board to loosely approve our budget, but we can't release it to you until the governor releases it. So we don't know if that'll take place at the June meeting or the August meeting, but we just ask that you keep that on your calendar, and if we can remove it, we'll remove it. So that's our request at this point.
Okay, very good. Then we'll leave that as is. All right, let's move to a public comment. Is there any public comment?
Just that, Dave, we're going to miss you.
I'm gonna miss you guys too. I really enjoy this group, especially when we get together.
Yes.
I second that comment. Dave, you've been great.
No, thank you, Jeff. You're a good guy, former Coloradan like myself, so we're all good.
Just one more point, Dave. That 14th is a Friday, and we have great golf courses here in Carson City, and we got a couple good bars. If you can just come hang out. I'm serious.
Well, I made the same comment to Marcy. I said, if you're not in Lake Tahoe, you might as well be in Carson because it's a hop, skip, and a jump to the lake. So, all right, good. Well, thanks everybody. I will adjourn this meeting. It's now 2:15 p.m. and it has been my pleasure, folks. Enjoyed it, and I'll try to stay in touch with you.
We'd love
Please
it.
do. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.